Hey y'all, if anyone's here, we're doing the Hanging Chads thing that we haven't done in a little bit. Because it's a lot of fun. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up what I was going to say. Let's get started.
Hey, what's up, my man?
Hey, did I not I thought I deafened myself. It's fine. Um hey friend. Um yeah, thanks for being here, buddy. All right. Um we're back. If you want to say things?
Yeah, I've been chilling. I've been enjoying the transition to fall. This is my birthday is later this month, so I've just been trying to, get out, do some fun things. I went to a metal concert the other night, and I was in the mosh pit the whole night, and I feel I am the most sore that I've been in like a very, 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 very long time. I have bruises all up on my shoulder right here and stuff, but I had a great time. It was very, very, very fun. So.
Okay, cool. That's it's interesting. A mosh pit. It's a very white thing to do, I think.
Hey,
It,
listen, okay. It was a diverse crowd. I'll let you know. It's a very diverse crowd. Okay.
no, this is one of the things that white people gifted to the other races, right? Like,
Yes, yes. White people, 100%. I was thinking of there's a scene in the movie Northman, which is a movie about Vikings. There's a scene where a bunch of Vikings are going around a big pit. They're doing like a Viking mosh pit, and I was just
yeah.
in the mosh pit. I was like, yes, yes. I'll have that in the debate when people are like, really? What's an example of white culture, Kobe? Oh, well, do I have an example for you? Let me.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here. I wish we could have done this last week. But we're here today, and later than we both wanted to be. But yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, Israel, Palestine, Hamas. That hasn't. It's worse. It's worse than it was before. What do you want to talk about in particular?
In the past like 2 weeks, I've actually pulled back a little bit from looking at the headlines after the strike on the hospital, and it really felt like there was, in my opinion, just it felt like everybody was just reporting that no one else knew anything, and it just be one little new piece of information would come out, and then everybody would talk about that for like 3 hours and just go around in circles. I kind of pulled back a little bit. It's became a present to me that I don't think you're going to be able, at least from, you're not going to be, you weren't going to be able to get the view of things that I wanted to get from looking at just headlines. And I've been reading and trying to look into some of this earlier history. 1948, some of the situation going on during the 1967 war, and then the Yom Kippur War, which very, very, I've been reading a lot of different things. Just trying to, I don't know, trying to open my mind to some of these things. I've also been trying to listen to some more Israeli perspectives. I have a couple other friends that I've been talking to a lot who I think are a little, quite a bit more firmly pro. I don't even like using the term pro or anti. Israel. I mean, it's weird team sportsy here, but they're very, very ideologically driven in one direction. And just trying to open my mind to some of the. I have an article maybe we can read that's from an Israeli leftist that is
Sure.
very disagreeable. I don't think I would agree with it well, much of any of it. Well, I sympathize with them. But the political nature of it. Let me see if I can find that. I kind of monologued there. What have you been up to? I know that you've been doing some debates. What's been your thoughts on?
Yeah, send me that article. We'll take a look at it. So my I've been reading things, reading articles, watching videos. Um, oh, here it is. Let me put this. Um, I have. Is the article itself here as a Reddit post,
Yeah,
or
it's like translated in the art in the post more or less. Yeah, and then the website link is just Israel is he in Hebrew. So
okay? All right. So we'll take a look at that. Yeah. So I have been listening to other deeper thinkers on this than myself, and trying to go back and get more of that historical perspective as well, which is difficult, but like also to like this historical perspective, all it ever reveals to me is that like there was an injustice that was done, and that injustice is ongoing, right? Like usually, like these debates when it comes to like should Israel have done what it did during like 1948, like with the ethnic cleansing? It's like, well, did it happen the way it was said? No. Oh, God. I made this point during the last debate, and my opponent didn't respond to this. I'm just realizing this now, because what they did, overall it was a pretty good debate. And yeah, like I don't have like a lot of complaints against the guy on the other side. He fought hard for his side, and I did for mine. Um, but he brought up that like when we're talking about ethnic cleansing, that it's Israel, I guess, didn't do it. Yeah, I think it was like it didn't do it, and the reason why, because there's no document, right? That was it, right? There's no document. So then I responded, well, if you look to Holocaust deniers, right, their central tenet is that there is no document that you can produce from the Nazis saying, all right, get like exterminate the Jews. It doesn't exist, right? And for the Serbian conflict, there's no document like exterminate the other side. Like that wasn't a thing, and there's rarely a document anywhere that actually says that. It's more about creating a climate where such a thing is acceptable, and then ends up being inevitable. And so and then we can see that the Palestinians were actually factually removed, right, from their homes, not allowed to return, like cleansed from those lands on an ethnic basis. So ethnic cleansing done. But he didn't respond to that particular point of mine. But I don't know why I even got onto
Yeah.
this.
There,
So.
there's a few things I noticed. Another one was there was a debate I saw between Norman Finkelstein and some other individual that I don't remember who it was, and the individual was making the argument. You see this point made a lot. Well, why don't we just expel the 2 million Gazans, half of which are children, into uh, Egypt or into Jordan? Why don't we just get rid of them? Is there something? And they kind of make this sly, almost dog whistle of an argument where they say, "Is there something wrong with this population that these other people wouldn't want them?" And they kind of hint and sly, and it's very similar. It's very interesting. Not to it's a tired comparison, but that was the way that the Nazi foreign diplomats would speak about Jews leading up to the Holocaust in the 1930s, leading up to the full extermination, where they would say, of course, we're trying to integrate these Jews, but it's just, look at none of these other countries want them. America doesn't want them. France doesn't want them. We are trying our best, but we're trying our best with this alien population. You'll notice that as well. That was brought up in one of the debate panels. This gets brought up, this sort of sly, underhanded, oh, well, these Palestinians, they barely even had a national identity until the 1800s. These things, yeah, I don't know. It would be funny if it wasn't so incredibly, overwhelmingly tragic that these arguments that have been historically used over and over and over again against Jews, almost any kind of bigotry has its, in some way, is like the first group that it was used against. In many cases, were the Jews, and then it's being used back now against Palestinians. I don't know. It's a very gruesome thing. I wanted to, as I think you're saying here, on one hand, you look back in the history, and the way that I think a lot of people present it is that it's this very foggy period. We just don't know what was going on, and I think there's a lot of there's truth to it. Aristocracy makes this point. She made this point in the panel that you were on. I think it's true, which is Israel does have a different standard of releasing military documents and historical documents versus the Iranian government or the Egyptian government or something. I completely concede that, of course, right? Those are dictatorships to an extent that Israel is not. But we know a lot. There's a lot, and you can get a very big picture from just looking at the verifiable evidence that's available. I'm going to quote very, very briefly here. This is from a manifesto released in 1923 by a far, no, to be very clear, this was a far right Israeli a Zionist. This guy was arrested by both the British and by the Irgun. So he was not. This is not. I'm not trying to claim that this was like, the Bernie Sanders of the Zionists. It was not a popular guy, but he was a guy that, in my opinion, in this manifesto speaks very, very frankly. He says, "We may tell them whatever we like about the innocence of our aims, watering them down and sweetening them with honeyed words to make them palatable. But they know what we want, as well as we know what they do not want." He's talking about the Zionists and the Arabs. That we want we want something from them, and they know what we want. They feel that at least the same instinctive jealousy of Palestine and this is so interesting, as the old Aztecs felt for ancient Mexico and the Sioux for their rolling prairies. This is an analogy being made in 1923 by a far-right Zionist that's imprisoned by the British. And nowadays, if you make this comparison, you're a far-left lunatic. If you compare the situation in Israel to the situation of the colonization of the Americas, you're a far-left lunatic. That's that's ahistorical, as was said in my opinion, it was an article released in the Atlantic that was discussed. And, we talk about Holocaust denial. It was denial of what I don't know what you would call it, but the denial of the genocide of the Native Americans, because it said in the article, anytime you hear the term settler colonial, you're looking at propaganda. So is it to say that just to be very clear, the genocide from this not my perspective, but this author's perspective, the genocide of the Native Americans is a propaganda. That's a propaganda term to talk. Complete nonsense that falls apart with just a second of historical inquiry.
I brought up settler colonial in my debate just now. And the guy kept saying it's just a buzzword. So it's a leftist buzzword. Like, these things don't mean anything. They're just saying that. I didn't really get a chance to address that head on. But yeah, I won't address it. It's just pretend, whatever. Yeah. It's a kind of that strategy that, like, let's not look at it through that lens, because that lens would be pretty awful for us. It's just like what leftists say within their circle. You call it leftist memes.
Yeah, the meme. There was I didn't watch the whole, or didn't listen to the whole discussion. There was a minor one that I thought was an interesting example of this. I would actually I think he used a meme. I'll turn it back on him. He used a meme. He used the term terror tunnels. He referred to the Hamas tunnels as terror tunnels. During the Warsaw Ghetto, the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto created a series of tunnels. I would never describe them as terror tunnels. I think that's a disgusting term, but a series of tunnels, because they were being bombarded. They would have troops come in and look for, it was a ghetto. It was an occupied, sieged off territory of a city. And they built tunnels under the area they controlled. How would you not? How would you live for over 50 years? And let's remember, 7 miles by 25 miles, right? Sometimes I ride 7 miles on my bike in the morning. So 7 miles what I ride in the bike, and then 25 miles probably what I ride in a week at the gym. That's how big this place is. There's nowhere you're going to build skyscrapers so that Israelis can bomb them down, and you can have things to show on Al Jazeera. The vast majority. The point I'm making is a vast majority of these tunnels are not used by terrorists, are used for terrorist ends. They're used by human beings trying to live their life, trying to move, trying to get things, get products into their store. Yeah. And so to refer to terror tunnels, I would say to him, it's this kind of covert dog whistly language that convicts the entire Gazan population.
Yeah. I think he would if I'm imagining, he would just ask for a source. Like, no, these are just like Hamas tunnels. And they are because Hamas does use them, right, to a certain extent. Hamas must use them, and so all of them becomes illegitimate, right? Like, is there documents show from Palestinians that say, oh yeah, I moved 10 pounds of flour through there today, this is like our regular route, I think that's what he would ask for.
Yeah, well, I would obviously this, I would, but the contention I would take up with him, and I'm sure you probably would agree with me here. So when we designate Hamas and anybody that is in any way, shape, or form connected to Hamas as being just terrorist, end of the sentence, no more discussion there, and that anything, and then therefore any infrastructure which they interact with is then terrorist infrastructure, which can be anything can be done with by the IDF.
Mm-hmm.
You have more or less condemned the entirety of the adult population of Gaza to being open military target of the IDF. Could you imagine making that claim? Imagine if, again, I'm sorry to continue to go back to this, but imagine if the Nazis had made that claim about well, we're not attacking the Russian people, we're attacking the Soviet people. So, of course, when we burnt down that village, that was a Soviet village built by Soviet terrorists. That was a terrorist village, so we had to burn that village down. We're not attacking these Russian villages. That's a completely nonsense thing. The Soviet government was the government of Russia, whether we like it or not. It was a totalitarian government, but it was the government of Russia. You know, Hamas is the government of the West Bank. This is something that I've been noticing on Destiny's subreddit. People are saying we can't listen to the Hamas ministries, even though historically the Human Rights Watch has said that the Hamas health ministries have been more or less accurate in previous conflicts. Again, Hamas has been the governing ruling party since 2006. Since I was playing Halo, and they were as Halo 3, and they were voting for the Hamas for the last time, the first and last time. There's no, I don't, it's just, I can't even imagine, many of the people that work here. I mean, me and you know how bureaucracies work in the West. People get appointed to things and they're there for 30 years in a functioning government in the West because they just get appointed there and they just get there. What can you possibly fucking imagine how long the corruption that's been there in Hamas, you know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah, I would agree with you that like I mean like my opponent was talking about like Hamas has convinced people to be human shields and sacrifices. Um I mean, yeah, sure. But he's like he like convinced the population. So like, and what I thought the implication of that was that like, uh, more or less most of the population was on board for all of these tactics. Um, I don't believe that's actually the case. I mean, I think if you what
I was just really good. You can use this in your debates going forward. You can cite it's on the episode of the Ezra Klein show from the New York Times that's called "What Gazans Think." They did a poll the day before the attack. It just so happened they were just doing an opinion poll that came out the day before the October attack. What they found was that support for Hamas was most high in the upper class, the more higher income people, the more urban people within Gaza, and the more lower class, the less the support was, and the more the complaints they had about the inefficiency of the Hamas government and about the corruption of the Hamas government. Which is something that I think is, as many of these conflicts, many of the people. I mean, I'm not. Let's be honest with ourselves. If you're a Palestinian and you're talking about how Hamas is awesome, and you're talking from your apartment building in New York City, you're all things considered, you're top 1% of all Palestinians in the entire fucking world, right? Not saying your opinion doesn't matter, but your opinion is not going to be reflective in the same way that a working class person in Jeff Bezos' position, they're not going to be the same about America. And so that's something that I would say, many of the people in Gaza do not support Hamas. And many times it is the people that support Hamas the least are the least well off.
Yeah. If you could hit me up with that poll or something, that would be great. I would love to be able to cite something like that. Um, uh, there was another point early in the debate about how uh basically like he was trying to make that this like is there a space between like Hamas and the people of Palestine. Um, thank you for that. I'll have to take a look at this. Yeah, there like is there distance? Oh, is there an uprising? Right? He like talked about like Iran and how like you see like uprisings there, and I said I wasn't aware of any uprisings, but like that wouldn't be the context of. I don't know if that would be the context of how they express themselves. We can see them do peaceful protests against Israel, which would be the oppressor in this case, right? Like the aggressor that I'd be most concerned with, where Hamas would just be the outlet for that, you know. Rather like the one of the tools, one of the vehicles, outrage would be Hamas, and so like they just wouldn't. They don't have a state to rebel against. They're rebelling against Israel. And so that's like going to be like the focus of their activism. And I don't know if and I literally don't know. It sounds like there's not much room there to like protest against Hamas, right? Like I don't know if that's an easy thing for them to do in that area. But,
I mean, the people have got. I mean, this is an obvious, in my opinion. There's an obvious calculus. If there's a civil war in Gaza, what's going to happen is Israel would use that as an emphasis to come in and put their put their hand militarily on whatever side they want to win. And so Gazans know that if there was internal divisions that became an internal civil war, that's just going to end up benefiting Israel at the end of that. That's not. I think there's something that I was reading a book. I've been reading a book about Hamas, and so they have these pieces of art in Gaza. And maybe they don't anymore. These streets have probably been turned to sand now. But at some point in the past 50 years, there were streets in Gaza, and on those streets they had painted on the walls, and they had the martyrs. They would paint the dead people, anybody that died, people that died in combat, and people that died by military airstrike. And you want to know what they would have? The colors on the top and the bottom. They would have green, and they would have red, and they would have black. The reason they'd have green is for Hamas, red for the PLO and the PFLP, so the secular side, and black for the Palestinian Jihad, which are the real extreme Islamists. The reason they would have that is because they would view them each, they in the same way that from a religious perspective, you're all part of one community under God, but maybe on Earth you have like a tribe, you have like you're an American, but you're also like a Christian first or whatever. They would say in this position that it doesn't matter what their political position is in life. Once they die, when they give their life to the cause, they become a martyr for everybody. It's everybody. It doesn't matter if they're from the many of the people in PLO do not like the Palestinian Jihad and view them as being unhelpful to their goals, and then vice versa, et cetera, et cetera. There are deep divisions within their society, but all the martyrs are seen as one. And I think that I don't know. There's just something that I think is powerful about that, and I think is understated by is understated by this call of just the Gazan people just need to rise up against the Hamas. Like with any of these things, there's a more the Gazan people are Hamas. Hamas is the Gazan people in a way that not like the Israeli government says, but also not in this. I don't know. Maybe I'm being confusing.
no, I think you're being very straightforward. That uh, that there's going to be a unity of cause, not a unity of means, right?
It means or ideals. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Like by necessity. I mean, maybe to be more clear, like by the necessity of the conflict, all those people are made martyrs to the same conflict, regardless of the tribe they were a part of in life. They get put on that wall.
Yeah.
By obviously, I'm sure some of them were soldiers that decided to come, but a vast majority of them are people that die. Are civilians that
die. So let's start reading this article that you have here. Op-ed by left-leaning Israeli journalist of the leftist fault line. A bit of a preamble. Drew Fear, I don't know, is a leading left-leaning journalist and media person in Israel with bylines in Haaretz, The Marker, and many more. He wrote the following op-ed on October 20. On October 20th, I am sharing this with you guys because I feel it pretty much encapsulates what most Israeli leftists have been feeling in the wake of October 7th. The op-ed in the original Hebrew can be found here. All right, great. So again, Joel Ferrer, I have no idea how to pronounce this. But the leftist fault line. 1. The hearts are like black holes collapsing into themselves to a dark point of pain and sorrow and rage that consumes all that we were up until 14 days ago, an eternity that lasted 2 weeks. The hearts are so heavy that sometimes I don't understand how we don't just sink waist deep into the pavement whenever we stroll. 2 weeks. I know exactly how long it's been, but I don't always know what day it is today. The days of the week have disappeared. Gave way to days of war, which change with the changing of the news ticker on the screen. Every day stretches to infinity and passes within a fraction of a second. They tell us it's going to take a long time. Time, like words, has lost all meaning. And moreover, what is it that's going to take a long time? the military operation, the release of the abductees, the defeat of Hamas, the resettling of tens of thousands of evacuees, the physical rehabilitation, the mental rehabilitation, the inquiry into what went wrong the day after, accountability, the restoration of trust in the state, the loss of wages, the finding of meaning, and how much time is a long time, a year, 5, a decade, more? Who can even see so far ahead when the present is so fog bound? The future we're beginning to understand is gaping in front of us like the abyss, with violent waves below and overcast skies above that we must traverse. The first step has not been taken, but sometime and soon we will need to lift ourselves up by the locks on our heads, put one foot in front of the other, and begin to march forward as we have done more than once before, each of us on our own and all of us together.
Just to pause right here, this paragraph right here on the second reading now is really striking me because I feel like what this is kind of communicating is there is a cultural understanding of kind of what happened after 9/11. Whereas as you see, the beginning of this paragraph is a bunch of questions, a bunch of things that could happen, right? It's a series of just questions with no answers. I think there's a recognition that a lot of the times when there is a horrific terrorist attack like this, which causes people to enter this sort of frenzied state, that it's you can very quickly run into, as he says here, like what's going to come? Is it going to become defeated Hamas? Is it going to be a 5-year project? Is it going to be the end of the abyss? Is it going to be a new finding of meaning? As we saw within 9/11, for some people it was the end of their political careers. For many, many, many people, it was the beginning, and it was the nexus of their political careers for a very long time. For many people, 9/11 gave them a new meaning. For many people, it felt like it was a death of meaning. And I feel like at the time, I feel like, I remember a lot of people say about 9/11 America, there was like the unity. Very, very quickly, I think we're seeing the rising of things that didn't come out in American consciousness until a couple years into the response, where we were looking, we're saying, guys, what did we become? What did we do? Obviously, there were people somewhere saying this, but from a larger perspective, that's something I pick up here, where there's an understanding, as he says, the staring into the abyss. I think is like an understanding here. I think there's something powerful here on this in this paragraph.
Yeah. I 100% like they get it. Like, what does getting rid of Hamas look like? Um, Something I should have said during my last debate there. Sorry, this is all like me rerunning that in my mind, but it's fresh. I just got off of that. But the defeat of Hamas, like, oh yeah, saying Israel has the right to do such a thing, but like, what does that actually look like? Like, how do you know Hamas is defeated? At what point, like, is there an end to this? What if Hamas never says that we are done? We don't know exactly how many of Hamas is there. Like, how do we know when victory is to be? Can we just keep? Does Israel have the right to keep bombing until, well, at infinitum? If that's the case, like,
Yeah, I think as it says here, it says, goodness, a restoration of trust in the state, a big issue that America had with our war in Afghanistan, and a big issue that we had even more with Vietnam, and the issue that Israel had with Lebanon was you can only send young 25, 24, 23, 22, 21-year-old men and women into a war zone where they're going to be killing a population of extremely radicalized young people. You can only do that for so long. You can only do that for so many times. You're going to start going fucking crazy. You're going to start losing your ability, your faith. You're going to, there's only so many propaganda films that you're going to see. That was an issue then, even though, sorry to keep going back to this, but that was an issue the fucking Nazis had, where they would have to rotate platoons of people that were doing genocides and pogroms of people, because people would lose their, we're human beings. It weighs on you. And I think there's an understanding of that it's like that what would be necessary to get rid of Hamas is going to require a lot of Israeli blood and a lot of broken Israeli, minds.
all right. Two. And hello if you're just joining us. We're just reading this article. This was translated from an Israeli newspaper. It's an author who's sharing their thoughts 2 weeks after the October 7th attacks in Israel. So we're reading their thoughts on this, and this is like from a leftist perspective. In between visits with relatives who survived and fled the Gaza envelope. Envelope? Do you know what they mean by that? Or is that just like a mistranslation, do you think?
Yeah, I'm assuming this is some kind of like turn of phrase. I'm not sure.
Okay,
Maybe I don't know. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Gonza,
maybe. Oh, sorry. Like maybe envelope means like it's like a package, like an ordeal, like it's like
mm,
a thing, like it's like a the event that happened that was all in the envelope. I think it's just a
yeah,
translation.
it's probably a metaphor. Yeah, okay. And Gaza. So in between business relatives who survive and fled the Gaza envelope, and volunteer work, I am glued to the television and the radio and the internet. From the moment I open my eyes to the moment I close them. When a panel of talking heads or an interview with a politician begin, I change the channel. I don't want conclusions, and I'm not interested in commentary, finger pointing, or blame dodging. I also stop watching the horrific clips. The only thing that I want is to consume the stories of the survivors and the wounded, and the abductees and the soldiers, stories of horror, stories of heroism, memories, tears, last moments, farewell messages. I need it. Something within me thirsts for this. Therapists say it's not healthy. Maybe they're right, but I don't care. It's healthy for me. I don't want to be in denial of avoidance. I don't want to shield myself. On the contrary, I want to be exposed. I feel it's my duty to absorb it all to the cellular level. I want to know when there is a bomb siren and where. I want to be with every Israeli from Metella to Beersheba, with every soldier and policewoman, with every Zaka volunteer. For 2 weeks, I have been feeling one with everyone in ways I never felt before. I am every baby and every old woman. This is not a we are all brothers cliche, not at all. It's the sharp understanding that it's me that they were looking for. Those thousands of Hamas militants and Gazans who entered Israel, and it's just that were stopped before they could reach me. More than 1,300 murder victims and 200 abductees, and were not as lucky as I was. That is all. If it would have been easier to breach Israel through Rabin Square, center of Tel Aviv, um, it would have been me on the television screens. Yeah, fair. And I'm paying.
Oh, sorry. Just it's something I noticed here. I feel like there's a very similarity between this response and the response I want to be exposed. It feels like it's my duty to absorb it on a cellular level. I feel a very similar way with the amount of attention that people in the West who are pro-Palestine has been giving this conflict too. I feel like a lot of people feel like they have a duty because of either way the American government has funded this or just out of some sort of humanitarian feeling that there needs to be. I need to understand I feel this that I need there's some sort of moral duty I have to understand the suffering of these people so they're not suffering alone in some cosmic sense. Um, I don't know. I resonated with that. I understand that. And I think the other thing is something that I realize with a lot of people that talk about this, not myself, but a lot of people that are people of color that talk about the Palestine issue, where he says it could have been me on the television screens. I think a lot of people that come from marginalized communities very, 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 very much have an easy time seeing their ancestors in Gaza and in the situation in their historical narrative being going a different way and it being not Gaza but some other city. And so I feel like I noticed I like that's a very strong current I've seen on both sides of this. Both your many people that are separated from the issue but feel a very deep connection, and people that also have a feeling as of if like there's a identification with the victims on one side or the other. Either they identify deeply with the victims on the Israeli side, or they kind of can see themselves as the Gazans. I don't know.
Yeah, so I as a person of Haitian descent, which I've told you about many times before, absolutely, the oppressed versus the oppressors, and rising up, in a violent manner. Yeah, I can see myself in all of that. Um, and I also agree with you. I didn't look at it from that side. I mean, I'm just like absorbing this right now, but I hear what you're saying about um engaging with the subject matter in a way that's like a responsibility. Like it I now this is happening all the time. Like everywhere. There's always these like horrible conflicts. Most of them we just fucking ignore here, honestly. So like that bothers me in itself, and that's why I try to like let people know like, hey, there's this other conflict that's happening that like the media is not talking about. Just so you know, just keep that on your mind that this like massacre is happening and we're just not discussing that. So I do that. But for this in particular, yeah, that sense has been even stronger. That like watching, the things that I like to watch to relax, and I'm thinking in my head, yeah, but like there are bombs dropping right now, and these people are dying, starving, cold, unhoused at this like hell that is ongoing for weeks at a time, and for maybe weeks, months more. What does that even look like? And here I am taking a break from from it all, even for a moment, even when I know I'm going to be jumping back into it, even later that day. But like it it seems like a luxury, you know, and it seems like I am doing some sort of justice for them by by talking about it, like educating myself and talking to others about it. Um, and I think to a certain extent that is true because um, part of even like the attack was to build like positive sentiment across the world, right? To get a response from Israel, a disproportionate response, they did. Um, and trigger what you're seeing, where you have tens of thousands of people showing up in Washington D.C. Massive protests happened just yesterday, and like it's ongoing. It's not stopping. It's like escalating these protests around the world. So I feel like I am doing something very 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 small, but like that is part of a tidal wave. And so like that's important to me, and so I do it. You know.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I agree with a lot of what you said there. You're echoing a lot of the feeling I have as well.
I'm paying for it all with liters of tears, hard days, and sleepless nights. We have all experienced that moment of waking from a nightmare and into a nightmare, but in return, I would say something which is more precious than gold. A reconnection, stronger than ever, to the collective Jewish Israeli spirit. I have always thought of myself as part of a fabric, a society, a nation. I was never a huge individualist, but in the last 2 weeks, I have been part of everything, and everything has been part of me. It's not always a pleasant experience. My body is relatively safe in Tel Aviv. My children are fine, but my collective spirit is standing bruised and stunned with its back against the wall and a knife across the throat in a burned down safe room full of corpses of all the people I love. In my dreams, I am holding on tightly to the door handle, not letting it open from outside, running over the kibbutz lawn, gunned down on the city pavement, getting trapped in a bomb shelter, fleeing the rave. Oh, how many nights have I been fleeing the rave only to return and flee from it once more the day after? In my nightmares, I don't have any battery or water or reception, and nobody's coming. I don't have heroic dreams. In my nights, I am not a rescuer, but I'm a rescuee at best. One night, I woke up screaming. I dreamt I was defending my home with a gun I don't have, and I accidentally shot one of our own. Do you want to say anything?
I mean, I just one of the reasons I wanted to read this, I thought it was very, even with the translation, I think it's a very beautifully written piece, and I think it can be when the only Israeli voice you hear are the equivalent of the Israeli Ku Klux Klan, which is what the Likud government is. You get a neg in the same way. If the only people you knew about white Americans was Ku Klux Klan, right? You would have a very specific viewing. And seeing this, I think this is I don't know. It's very emotionally moving to me.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I think that, um, like on a human level, assuming you're not like a straight up bigot, that just hates Israelis because they're Israelis, that even if you're on the pro-Palestine side, which I'm firmly on, that like I can connect with this individual, and the horror, because what happened, what Hamas did was horrible. He's describing these massacres, these atrocities they committed on that day, in the nightmare that thought that yeah, it could have been me. Like not just the people who like live there died, but people who were just like visiting family who showed up, and then that just happened the other day. if it had happened the next day, they wouldn't have been there. But it happened October 7th, and so they died. Um,
Mhm.
and so yeah, you can resonate with that fear, that intensity, and to know that they were part of the Israeli project, whatever you may think of that, but you're part of that too, whatever you may think of that, and just have a level of solidarity, whether they're Orthodox or they're secular or whatever, you want to say?
Oh, there's a very good show that's on HBO Max. It's called Valley of Tears. It's a show made by it's like an Israeli 7-part series about the 7 Day War. It's like a fictional show. It's a fun little history show. But in that, at the very beginning, they have a little like recap, and they basically it's very very eerie. This show was released last year, so it's before the attack, but it's very eerie of how similar it is. Where it starts and it shows videos of Israelis in the 1970s dancing, and they're dressed, and it's the shots of 1970s cool glasses, bell bottoms, and it says the text over the narration says we had been lulled into a dream, we'd fallen asleep, we'd gotten too high on our own supply. In 1967, so 5 years before, Israel wins a huge, extraordinary victory against the Arab nations. Right, this huge war. This is the beginning of the support of America, the real big support of America. So there's a feeling in the Israeli society that they were kind of moving beyond this era of being attacked by their neighbors. And then what happens in Yom Kippur? They get attacked. They get horribly attacked, and they get pushed out of the Sinai, and they get pushed back to their current borders. It was a horrible, horrible military defeat, and extremely humiliating for the Israeli national identity. And to see it happen again, I think that's something that needs to be remembered. There's a flashback happening here. Imagine if another 9/11 happened, another similar event happened. It would not be the same. Americans would be affected in different ways. And so I think that's something that's something that needs to be remembered.
Yeah. So um I think it's really interesting. I had seen videos when I was, we've been doing research. And these videos were from was it 2 years ago, because it was another conflict. I think it was in the West Bank. It was you remember, like, with the apartments that are being cleared out, and that triggered that big response. And like the descriptions of the videos, I had to like keep checking the date, because it sounded exactly like what was happening here. But that this is quite cyclical. And it's interesting that, like, and I don't want to blame any individual, like Israeli, for this, right? But like, I'm just like the Israel mindset, that like this like shock and surprise. It's like they keep thinking that the Palestinian question has been answered, right? We put up walls, we are crushing them under our boot in the West Bank, and then we're just trying to ignore whatever the fuck is happening in Gaza. Every so often, we hear screams from inside the prison, but like, overall, this is done. But it's not done, and it won't be done. And like this, there needs to be an equitable response to this, or yeah, it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. Like, you can, if you try to completely ethnically cleanse Palestine and the West Bank, well, then you're triggering that war. Like a straight up, no fucking around regional war at some point. They realize that, which is another reason why they haven't done it. Um one of the long reasons why they haven't done it. Um like, this will never be swept under the rug. Like, and to not realize that this is an ongoing harm, I think it's easy to lull yourself into a false sense of security, right? We did the ethnic cleansing. We have the backing of most of the world to do that, at least the political backing, actually, to do this. And so now it's done, but it's not done, and it won't be. So it's weird just hearing that, like, we were surprised. How could you be? Um,
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
all right. Many things changed in these last 2 weeks, including my political leanings. In my eyes, I am a centrist, but many will probably define me as a leftist. I believe that my enemy in Gaza is just flesh and blood, just like me, skeptical of everyone, just like me, a person who can be a lover if I just stretch my hand out to him. Um, I thought that at the end of the day, everyone beyond the fence just wants to live, like me. I believed we could mitigate the extremism and the hate, that leniency and acceptance are paths to a better future. The indirect negotiations are better than nothing. The briefcases full of money are better than rockets. Well, no more. Yes, of course, my enemy is flesh and blood, but he is not like me, and I'm not like him. On Saturday morning, October 7th, the limits of humanity have been crossed and all bridges have been burned. This was not resistance to the occupation. This was not because of the blockade of Al Aqsa. Um, this was deep, abysmal, twisted, bloodthirsty hatred in which, alongside trained terrorists, many civilians partook and committed travesties that were heretofore unimaginable. I admit, I couldn't believe that they could behave this way. And after they did, nothing can return to normal. I will never believe them again. After this treachery, how can you trust a syllable coming out of their mouths? How many times have they deceived us? How many times have they lied to us? I find this paragraph fascinating. I find it fascinating. Now, I don't hate this man for saying this, right? But like everything that he said, I could imagine this like being in a Palestinian op-ed, right? How many
Mhm.
times have they lied to us? How many times have we've gone to the negotiating table for lopsided deals backed by their American sugar daddy that puts us in a completely untenable position? How many times have we suffered these indignities, these tragedies? Have they bombed us? Have they killed us? Have they raped us? And this just happens all the time. How can I believe a word that ever comes out of their mouth? Like a Palestinian could have written that, correct?
Yeah, no, I 100%, I completely agree. And I think that this sentence, this paragraph right here, changed some of the date, changed some of the names and dates. And I think that a vast majority of people that would be extremists on either side would agree with this sentiment, would
Mm-hmm.
agree that that was the way they've been treated by the other side. Um, Obviously, in different timelines and things. The one thing though that I really think is a very powerful sentence, and I don't think it's a logical sentence. I'm not agreeing with it in a logical sense, but I think that just emotionally, I don't. We met through debates, as you know. I enjoy formulating arguments and trying to convince people. I didn't believe, and I admit I couldn't believe that they could behave this way. And after they did, nothing can return to normal. I will never believe them again. That right there, for I don't know whatever the remains of the Israeli left. I don't know how you argue against that. How many times I was thinking this? How many times have you seen on news the image of the plane hitting the tower on 9/11? I've probably seen it upwards of 10,000 times. And the very first shot of the HBO teen drama show Euphoria is a shot of the towers hitting a plane hitting the towers. It's used in sports. I've seen it in sports advertisements. I've seen it. It's used randomly. You'll go to events and it will just pop up. That exact same thing is going to happen with an undescribable amount of images of human brutality on Israeli TV. In the same way, to be very clear, in the same way that an unending assault of brutality is shown on Palestinian TV. And something I've realized, I've watched a couple documentaries. I've realized something. A lot of the stuff they show in the West is actually neutered, if that makes sense. They show some censored images. The stuff that they show on the Middle Eastern things is I'll put it to you like this: if you get killed in an airstrike and you just get crushed, you're lucky. You're lucky. I'll put it to you like that. If you get killed in an airstrike and you just get pulled out of the body, your body's intact, you're lucky. Not saying you're lucky, but you're lucky in the comparison of how you can die to an airstrike. Some of the ways that people die to these airstrikes, it's not pulling bodies out of rubble. It's pulling pieces of people that get turned into a million pieces. You don't unsee those things. And the same Americans don't unsee 9/11, and Israelis don't unsee October 7th, and Palestinians don't unsee the Shatil and Shabra massacres. I think that sentence right there is if there's any lesson that the 20th century should teach us, the Armenian genocide, the genocide of the Harato people of West Africa, the genocide of the whole list. I didn't believe they could do it. And once I saw them, I could never go back to believing they couldn't do it. You can never not see them as being able to do that. And that just becomes something that can go, whether that becomes something you see of the oppressor, where you kind of have, there's, you're trying to be the moderating voice in Palestine. And at some point, you just can't even make the fucking argument anymore. Even if you believe in your soul that Hamas is not the right answer, you just can't even bring yourself to make the argument. Or if you're in Israel and you're trying to be the voice of peace and you're having to argue against the emotional perspective that's coming through this article. If anything, the position that I argue is, if you have a person that you look after and you love and you're in a relationship with, and America is in a relationship with Israel, whether we like it or not, and they're doing something to harm themselves. If you have your friend and your friend says, well, I'm really angry with my wife. I'm going to go home and I need you to drive me to my house so I can beat her. She's gone too far. I need to take, do you take him home? Do you drive him home? No. You stop. Even if that means that you have to hold him the rest of the night and you have to keep him at your house, you do not let him do that action. Even if he is it's his consent. He wants to do it. And that's what I would say. By us funding Israel and allowing them to do this, as he says here, they're teetering on an abyss. America was on that same abyss and we fell into it after 9/11. It would be, in my opinion, it would be irresponsible for us. And that's one of the reasons, as you said earlier, why do trying to understand why you have that feeling of needing to understand the conflict. I feel so much like we've been there. I've been there. America has been there, where you suffer a horrific terrorist attack and seemingly overnight logic goes out the window. People that used to be reasonable become unreasonable. Sentiments and statements that used to be completely unacceptable become completely normally logical. And if you're trying to be the voice of reason, it's like impossible.
Yeah. I love your point about within the 20th century, with the rise of mass media, there is no walking away from these things. Not like these horrible travesties weren't happening beforehand. They were, maybe on a smaller scale, because, we didn't have, we couldn't do it on an industrial level the way we can now. But still, different regions wiped out like a neighboring region, and it just was a fact of humanity. But for those who were left, right, in the next village over, who didn't get to see it, right, you'll hear the stories. But it's easier to make the case, hey, we should still make peace with our butchers, when it's not replayed for you endlessly, when it doesn't become part of your national narrative in that way. And so that is just something that we'll have to deal, as humanity, we'll have to deal with this. How do we move past this trauma when we have a record of it, a digital record that we can go back to often, and that and when there's a portion of people who have an incentive to want to keep that narrative front and center, right? For ill or for good. They have reasons to keep that narrative front and center. How do you move past that? I don't know.
It's very hard to want to move past it, no matter what side you're on, without seeming callous and cold.
Mm-hmm.
It's whether you're talking about, for example, when you are, I think it was very interesting. I think that this conflict, I think something that's going to be looked back very curiously is reporting about the hospital bombing and reporting about the 40 desecrated babies. Mm-hmm. Both of those were things that within a day or two, a lot of the initial reporting was not as factual as maybe people would want it to be. And there are certain claims made about both those instances that just didn't show up. And some people just kind of wanted to roll with it. They just kind of wanted to keep repeating that there were these 40 babies, or they just wanted to keep repeating there were 500 people that died at the hospital, and just not much of an interest in, as you say here, just hoping that people are just not going to wonder. And I don't know, the fact so many people were willing to believe it on one hand, expectable, but also frightening.
Yeah. But yes, I don't know, as a people, what do we do? There was something else you had said I wanted to respond to, but I forget what it was. But in any case, we'll just continue on. You want to? He is not like me, my enemy, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how to speak about innocents in Gaza when more than 1,300 innocents were slaughtered. I don't know how to speak about bystanders when they bomb shelter hospitals. I have heard so many times that the Gazans are Hamas's captives, and I nearly believed it until I saw the clips of abductees paraded in Gaza, and the Gazans didn't seem to be all that much in captivity. If anything, they seemed in good spirits. And if they really are captives, by all means, release information about one abductee. Go ahead, point the location of one elderly woman. Come on, provide medication to one ailing captive. Uh, so long as one of our children are being held in Gaza, those are the only captives of Hamas we are allowed to talk about. Is the citizen of the Darat less innocent than a Gazan? Of course not. Are the children of Nedavat uh, more important to me than the children of Saijaya? Sorry. You bet. This is my people, my children, my parents, my brothers. Hmm.
I think this is a very difficult passage. I think I think going back to what Joaquin said earlier, the very first part of that, again, you can just change the numbers there, and both sides would completely agree with that. Of the idea of what do we, the other side is targeting our hospitals, the other side is calling us settlers and saying there are no civilians. I would be very curious, though. Obviously, I think this would obviously, this is his reaction. That was relatively close after the massacre. There have been some hostages released. There has been some controversy about the status of the care of the hostages. I personally don't. I know nothing about that situation. Not going to speculate. I have no idea what was going on in the Hamas tunnels of these captives. I don't really feel ethical speculating on that. I would be curious though to see if the reactions of Hamas have in any way shaped his action there, or sorry, his thoughts there, because this is from releasing hostages is something that they have done now, and I don't know, who knows.
Uh,
And the last one though, I don't totally know these cities here. Nevarot sounds like a Hebrew word, so I'm going to assume that that's is like a Hebrew, like an
yeah,
Israeli neighborhood. Yeah, southern district of Israel, and then Sajirah is a city in. Okay, so they're just comparing Palestine,
yeah,
a Palestinian city. Okay, I was just wondering there. Again, as somebody, the real truth of it is, as somebody who's really never actually been in a war, you know what I mean, or like lived in a country where it's like the only time I've been alive has been the Iraq and Afghanistan war, which are more complicated. They're not like wars like this or Ukraine. I've seen a lot of similar things said. Like I remember reading like Ukrainians and Russians saying this kind of stuff at the beginning of the Ukraine war. And I'm gonna be honest, I can't get my brain or my heart to understand this. But I also have to recognize I'm also very privileged to never have been in this situation, to have to make that decision of like whose children matter more than me. I don't have. Not only do I not have children, I've never had to even really make that serious calculus.
like this honestly it kills me. This topic right here, and like literally like tearing up a little bit here because like this idea that those children, those people don't matter. Like this is something I thought about. Like you've seen me have these arguments when we talk about conflicts and people just like throw out casualty numbers like it's no big deal. And well, the military had to respond this way. There was no choice. Like uh, copy and paste this to whatever fucking conflict you want to talk about. And how people will you're saying, well, no matter what, like the military just had to do it, right? And so these casualty numbers are acceptable. These are just acceptable casualty numbers, you know? As if there aren't people on the other side of that. Because those people matter. They, you don't see them, but they exist. And people cry, they're in tears over it as well, over those individuals. Like there is heartbreak when they die or are maimed. And I can't move past that. Other people can very easily, especially if they don't actually see it. Because those numbers they hide so much, right? That old Stalin quote about like killing was 1,000 people is easier than killing like one like a person because you can humanize that individual. Um, I I hear you on like never having been in a war zone, And I keep that in my mind all the time when I talk about these things, right? Not to say that I can't speak of it. It's more like I turn the other way and saying that others excusing the brutalities that we inflict, like the Americans inflict on the world. God, you're lucky. God, you're fucking lucky that it's almost certain within your lifetime, because you live in such a stable nation, that you won't have to be a refugee, that you won't have to flee your home. At least maybe for a natural disaster like in Katrina, but like not because of an invading army, which is a different sort of terror. You won't have bombs dropped. You'll probably never live under an occupied regime, and have to navigate around soldiers who are there to control you and who are scared, who are like 18, 19, 20-year-old boys who've been told that you're the enemy. And they're scared too. They want to go home, and so any movement of yours equals a threat, and so they kill you. Right? Black people know something about that, but you won't understand these things. And so when you just say that, yeah, I guess it's just okay we've wiped out, we've dropped these bombs on these people because there's a group of individuals who might have been militants. Well, at least they're boys of military age, and so I guess we killed the right people. Whatever, right? When you can do that, that's a privilege of yours that so many others don't have. So, sorry.
No, don't apologize. I think you spoke about it very powerful in a way that I was not considering it. I think, I've definitely felt that, but I think you put it into words very well. It is so insane. I think, as you say, just makes one sick to the pit of their stomach to see people just talk about these things as if it is the routine of break down a building and some squirrels die, break down a building and some refugees die, or people. I'm sure you saw there was a refugee camp that was bombed, which caused some tunnels to collapse, causing a wide. I don't even know if the casualty counts are out yet, and people were deciding that it was now a wonderful time to have a conversation about the origin of the term refugee camp. What is a refugee camp? Really, they've been there for so long. It's despicable. It's unbelievable. It's as I mean, again, I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be anti-Semitic when I say this. I don't think it is, but it's in the Bible there was a group that was in the desert for 40 years. Did they lose their refugee status because it was 40 years? Maybe we can give the Gazans 40 years. They can be 40 years of refugees, and then we'll kick them into the Sinai. I'm using this to make an illustrative point. I don't think any human should be treated this way, but we have a double standard. And sometimes when some brutalities happen, it's a time to come and create create a definitional crisis, and we need to have a discussion of what it really even means. But other times we can't even. It's not the time to talk about settler colonialism. That's a meme. It's a meme. But collective punishment, that's a given. Settler colonialism is a meme. Collective punishment's a given.
In the debate, the guy I was going against said, when I said that Gaza is a refugee camp, right, and a concentration camp, but a refugee camp, and he said, well, maybe the first and second generations, but not the third and fourth generations, that you lose that status at that point. And I was mind blown. But I responded, okay, like trying to do this like in the most charitable way. That like I can get like the logic, like the through line here, because like it would be weird if we talked about like the various religious minorities who fled England to come to the States, right? It would be like the Quakers and the whatnot, right? It'd be weird if we said about those people that after generations of being here and having roots, being fully integrated into society, having political power within this nation, those people are still refugees. That would be like misapplying that term. But these people like aren't settled. They're stuck there. They don't have a choice in leaving. They're second class citizens in Israel. and they're still being deprived of economic opportunities and their land and all those things. Those people who are still suffering the harm, yeah, they're refugees. He didn't reply to that one either. Crazy.
I would be, the I'm very skeptical of how. I feel like a lot of the time people that defend the Israeli government very much want to get boggled down in these as is happening in chat. Is it a concentration camp? It is an open air prison, which seemingly I don't really know what the difference between those two would be. I feel like one is the other and the other is the one. There's a term that I personally like to use is reservation. I think there's actually something very similar to what has happened to the people of Gaza, to what has happened to Native Americans, where they were put on tiny minuscule pieces of land with the simple status of don't leave. You're not allowed to leave. And anytime they would leave, they'd be hunted and brought back and put back onto that land. With the express expectation in many cases that they were just going to kind of the seed of their race, as the turn of phrase used to go in the time, that they would just kind of die off. But I don't know. It seems in any other circumstance we would apply these kind of terms to the situation here. It's very curious. I wonder. Many of these international laws of humanitarian crises were developed to describe what happened to Jewish people during the Holocaust. They didn't exist before we made these laws up. The modern world is a new thing. We came up with laws. The UN is only within living generations. Does that mean what does it mean that why does it matter that the status of refugees changes? That makes no sense. Of course, it's going to change because new events are going to happen. What if we hypothetically, if the Israeli government were to put all Palestinians onto boats into the center of the ocean, can we no longer call them refugees because there's no stipulation in the UN that says, well, that's unfair because after the Israeli government put them on boats in the middle of the Red Sea, the evil anti-Semitic UN made the refugee status. They modified it. Well, yeah, kind of. There was a change of events. Again, like I don't know. It should be very clear. That's not just some random thing. That was actually the idea of putting them on a boat and putting them in the sea was actually something that was said by I can't remember who. Was it an Israeli government official after the attack?
And then promptly sinking those ships, I'm sure. Yeah. Fucking hell. Wow. All right. And shout out to anyone else who's been joining us. Hey guys, if you want to hear respond to us, you want to say a thing to us, use a super chat or a or anything like that, or a hype chat if you're on Twitch. Consider supporting this channel so we can keep providing you with this content. And shout out to my friend Kobe for being here with us, but we'll continue on with this article. I admit my heart is shut to the pains of the Gazans. As a diet leftist, it is hard for me to think these thoughts, let alone put them to paper. But what else can I do? After what happened, the only humanitarian crisis I care about is ours. If the Gazans are truly Hamas's captives, then this war is for their good as well, isn't it? At long last, war will free the Gazans and allow them to become the Hong Kong of the Middle East, like they have always dreamed of, turning Gaza into the paradise of women LGBTQ, like they always wanted to until Hamas came and put them in captivity. All right, so there's multiple things here. One, something I didn't get to say before is that, like, in that whole rant that I gave, I would hope of myself. I can't say that it is the case. I would hope that if my family, people I cared about, friends, like my friend Kobe here, suffered the fate of those that, that befell the Israelis after that attack, that I could still see if it was like a ethnic cleansing type of situation, not like random violence or something, but like if something similar that happened, that I could see the other side as still human, as not some intractable enemy. Maybe like the soldiers who did it, not so much. They maybe there's no redeeming them, but I hope that I could. I fear that I'd fail. So I want to make it very clear that I don't like this person who's writing this isn't being a complete unreasonable, and to say that, well, you've betrayed all your previous principles, because look, man, like these people have died. I don't know if any of his family members have died. It doesn't seem like it was the case here, but like still, seeing all these images like weighs on you, and that idea that they stated previously that it could have been me, and it could have been my family that died very, very easily. Um, so I hope that would be the case, but I don't know. I don't
One of
know.
the reasons
But
why
and just quickly, almost there. And if I change, if I'm filled with hate, I hope there's someone else to stop me from like being retributive in going back out there, going back against that enemy, because like that feeling may in my heart might be legitimate, right? It might be understandable, but that hatred, that the cycle that I would continue would only would serve no one. But go ahead.
I'm sorry for interrupting you. The last little bit there was one of the best things you said. It made me think of a verse from the Quran where Muhammad, one of his followers, asks him, he has to go into battle. He doesn't want to go into battle. And he says, sometimes, says, God knows more better than you. Sometimes he asks you to do violence when you want to make peace. And sometimes he asks you to make peace when you want to do violence. And it makes me always think of another quote, which is from St. Augustine, who's a Christian writer. And he said, who but God put onto the heart of man the laws of nature? Those animal impulses to view the enemy, as he says, to shut your heart to the pain of the enemy. That, which I think we can all agree, feels like a failure state of the individual, but that we all know lurks as a possibility for ourselves if given the right circumstance. I think that if we can apply that to the Palestinians, which I think we can easily do as leftists, we have to apply that to the Israelis. The Jewish history does not start in 1948, nor does Jewish history start in 1940, nor does Jewish history start in 1933. Jewish history goes back quite literally to the dawn of written history. And so I think that it's just something you have to remember, that those kind of animal impulses, as you see, and when I say animal impulses, I'm not, I think that's not a great turn of phrase, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That when you see those super logical, irrational impulses, those are in the hearts of every human being. Another example, another quote of this is a secular leader, Albert Camus. He was French in the 1960s, and his mom was born in Algeria. She was a French Algerian, and he was being very heavily pressured to speak out against the French occupation of Algeria. And as leftists, I think we would agree he should have. But he said something that I think is a very human truth. He said, if I have to choose between my mother and justice, I choose my mother. And that is the thing, is that for far too long, the Palestinians have had to choose justice or their mothers. And for far too long, the Israelis have had to choose justice for their mothers. And as this man says here, he could ignore it. He could ignore that question. He could live in Tel Aviv. He could go to nightclubs. His daughter, and I think he said he had kids. His kids could go to preschool, and he couldn't have to make the decision: justice or my mother. He could say, "I could be a diet leftist. I could have my cake and eat it too. I could speak of the great peaceableness of the Palestinians and condemn Hamas." But he was presented with a position in the same way that Palestinians are presented and have been presented every single day for the past month, with a question: are you going to do what is the right thing to do according to international law, or are you going to do what you know is right for your mother? Are you going to bring justice to your family?
Um, it's powerful. What you just said. Choose my mother or choose justice. Fuck. I really, really love my mom. I really do, and I know you do. I certainly know you do, Kobe. Kobe's an incredible.
I don't want to get personal, but I think you'll know that speaks very deep to me. That speaks very, very deep to me.
Yeah. Kobe happens to be an incredible son. I tell him this privately. Like he's a really good, like child to his mother, like caretaker and all that. He's amazing. And the thought of, I think, to both of us, our mothers or justice, right? Like what if you had to kill like an enemy, right? Like imagine it was like between like your mother somehow and a helpless enemy soldier, you know, right? One that didn't harm you, but like it's one or the other. Justice would say not to hurt that person, that stranger. That's my mom.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that I think even if you are going to take the perspective that you're the great, you're the great moral Zion of the world, and you would make the right decision. I think you can at least admit other people are going to have a hard time doing it, and so
Yeah.
that's something that I keep in my mind a lot.
And I love what you're saying about like if we have to extend that to Israelis as well. That it's inevitable they're going to feel this way. Absolutely. I would say that the cycle of hatred has to stop. I've been saying this often, and I know people react aghast when I say that, but like I say, like as a response, the best thing that the Israelis could have done is push back the invading Gazans to the wall and open up negotiations. I understand it's impractical. I understand like there was no chance of that happening, but that would have been the best way of handling this. Opening up negotiations so this never happens. Learning from all these other times that Israel has been attacked, and realize like there has to be a different way. That when you do this, when you uh terrorize, and that's the word I would use, this population, this helpless population, that the rest of the world is going to respond, and then you are just inviting the next attack. That again, you'll be shocked when it happened. So like, unless we open up negotiations seriously, right, and Israel makes some tough decision that it's not going to fucking like.
Well,
Just
the truth of it is, I don't think it's going to be Israel making the decision. It's going to be America. I think a
mm,
lot of the Israeli, this is more of a geopolitical analysis that I'm not as educated about, but it does
mm,
seem to me, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, America sent two strike carrier groups over there for one reason, is to say to Hezbollah and to say to Iran, no, no. We sent over, I think I told you, but I think we talked about this right after this happened. 1982, America sent some troops over to help Israel invade Lebanon, to stop the PLO from doing attacks on Israel from Lebanon. And we sent over something called a Marine Expeditionary Unit. It's about 2,000 armed troops and more guys that help those troops on an aircraft carrier. We sent two of them this time. Two of them. So the last time we were in the region, we sent uno, we sent dos. So I think that's that's sending a message to the people in the region, and I think it's sending a message to Israel too, saying, "Hey guys, it's serious. You guys can't just be dropping bombs with no with no thought of," as he says, that next Tuesday is an abyss. No, next Tuesday is not an abyss. We're still going to be here.
but I mean, like America sent those as backing Israel, right? So you're saying,
Oh, the primary, absolute primary goal of that is to stop Hezbollah and to stop Iran.
yeah,
I do though believe that I think this is something that's been coming out in just the ways, things that Blinken had been saying. Another element of this is to kind of remind Israel, if you guys go too far, we have no choice but to follow you, and this becomes a regional war. That I don't even think. I think that there are some in the far right of the Israel that want, but I don't think the majority of people want that in
yeah,
Israel.
yeah, makes
There's a
sense.
very deep, in the same way a lot. I mean, we live in America, we live in the heart of empire, and people are terrified that the communists are going to hack Facebook and make us all gay. People in Israel are terrified that 1948 is going to happen again, that America is going to abandon them, that there's going to be a wrong election in America, we're not going to support them enough, and that there's going to be Hezbollah from the north, Egypt from this, or Egypt. I mean, at this point, I know not Egypt, but Hezbollah from the north and Iran, and coming in and killing them or whatever.
Yeah. I think that they should be afraid of us abandoning them. Like I was saying that I think Israel's ability. I didn't say it in exactly this way, and I should have been a bit more precise in my language. But previously for a debate, I was saying that Israel's hold is slipping. And it's by the hold is not that like it, Israel is any less powerful than it is, but its ability to set the narrative is what I meant to say. Is slipping, and that younger generations are thinking differently about this. Um, Israel's like backing of the world is going to end at some point. I truly believe this. This is another uh, another brick in the road to that. I don't know. This, you know the metaphor I'm trying to get to. All right. This leads to that. It goes into something else. Uh, that like Norm it was the Finkelstein that I think you brought up previously. He said, I didn't see this directly on Twitter, but it's been described to me. Uh, Basically that like uh, how could this be helpful to um the people of Palestine, like the October 7th attacks, which again I condemn. Um, and he basically compares that to the slave revolts in the U.S. Uh, like Nat Turner's slave revolts, and he says, "Well, you could have said the same thing at that time. That this revolt was surely not going to work. These are slaves weren't going to defeat the whole of America, and that it was easily foreseeable that once you did the slave revolts, like for everyone who wasn't wiped out in that, right? For the ones who were left, the brutality would increase so that it never happens again, of course, right? We have to make sure that doesn't happen. Um, and, but that like this becomes another moment, a long historical struggle. And that like you can like draw a line of thought of resistance and struggle from those revolts to the abolitionist movement and to like MLK, right, through the civil rights movement until like this day. You could see that that's all part of this, and it moves the ball along, even though the people at the time, there were plenty of slaves at the time, African slaves, who would have said, please don't do this, don't revolt, the consequences will be disastrous for the rest of us. You're not gonna win. But like I guess people want to. This is the MLK Malcolm X dichotomy, right? Where people and I was definitely part of this too, want to cleanly separate peaceful demonstrations and protests from violence. That these two things are separate in history. One is bad, and we should ignore that, and definitely don't do it. And the other one is good, and that alone will accomplish the goal when it's both of those things are tightly intertwined. Um, and so like once you understand that that's just how these revolutionary struggles work, then yeah, this was inevitable. And it moves things along, tragically though it may be.
Yeah, I think Finkelstein's comparisons to the some of the writings and reactions to of abolitionists to slave revolts are really useful and really kind of give us a lot of a historical analogy. To me, the way that there's something very strong as he points out, you can condemn the atrocity. A child being killed is an atrocity. A woman being killed in the bed is an atrocity. Someone's being burnt down in their house, et cetera, et cetera. Torturous deaths, et cetera, et cetera. However, something that all the abolitionists would continuously be made known is they would say, we had been warning you. We had said that if you keep human beings, as he says, if Nat Turner, that's the slave revolt, said that the Finkelstein quotes a abolitionist who said, when the gap between one's existence and what one knows their existence ought be, internal sense of self-respect that every human has, when one is forced to live in that gap between those two, they either blow up or give up. They either blow out and do something, as you say, not necessarily rational, super rational, not something moral, something immoral, something anti-moral, maybe, just saying that was what Nat Turner said, kill all whites. That's not even amoral, it's just anti-moral. Just do whatever. And that's the either, as you say, there's the two, what would be the two reactions to most slaves? Obviously, I'm speaking out of my, my historical wheelhouse here. I'm assuming would have been to give up. That's not going to work. What are you saying? That's insane. Or to blow up. Okay, what time? Those are probably the two answers you would have got. Same kind of thing you probably get with Gaza. Same kind of thing you get with Gaza. Okay, sure. What time? And or versus, no, that's not going to happen. It's not going to do. So, I won't press the analogy too much, but something that almost even some of these very pro-Israel liberals agree is that Benjamin Netanyahu is a maniac. That the Likud party is a quasi-fascist party. Even Eli Lake, who was one of the big proponents of the Iraq War,
Eli
referred to it as
Lake.
a Judeo-fascist party. They're in power. They have been in power for almost 20 years now, more or less. And the American government has had a policy against the settlement since 1970s. We need to take a similar response, or in America, I should say, need to take a similar response to abolitionists, to the slave, to those who upheld slavery, and say, listen, of course, an atrocity is an atrocity, an amoral action is an amoral action. But the wide variety of problems that we can all agree that need to be solved need to actually fucking be solved. There needs to be the settlements have to fucking stop. There has to be a stop of the fucking siege and encirclement of Gaza. These things are just not. It's not that, as you say, there will be a larger regional war, a larger regional confrontation sooner or later, because you're forcing 2 million people, half of which are children, to exist in an unexistable situation.
Okay. So agree with everything you said, and it was super fucking poignant. But you reminded me of something. So in case you haven't, let me see if I can pull up a picture of this dude. If you don't know, this guy, our friend, Kobe here just brought up this guy, Eli Lake. Right, it's this fucker right here. This guy, yeah, he's a big like warmonger and all that. I would see him do rounds on MSNBC, of course, often, right? But this guy, like, especially here, this is an even better picture. Yeah, okay. So the thing about this guy is that he reminds me of in Game of Thrones, the Lord Bolton of the flayed the flayed man house, right? They had the flayed man flag, right? That guy who was back, he's the one who ordered the red wedding, right? So if you remember that, so a complaint that people had about that the actor in the TV show is as like he looks nothing like uh Lord Bolton. Eli Lake does though. Eli Lake absolutely fucking does. Like the dude's supposed to be a bald man, like almost completely like hairless, right? Have a very soft face, a very unassuming character, right? But like creepy as all fuck. And capable of like the worst fucking violence. And that's Eli Lake. I'll put that out there.
And Eli Lake, like I was saying, he had a debate with Finkelstein recently, and I just thought it was very interesting. Finkelstein is an older guy. He's in his 70s. He was dressed well. He was dressed in like a blazer. He dressed like he was like going to be on a show. He had obviously got his hair cut. And Eli Lake was dressed in a T-shirt that had Theodore Herzl's face on it. Theodore Herzl's the founder of Zionism. It wasn't even a well-fitting T-shirt. It was like you can see the rips and kind of folding over on itself. He was like hunched over. I don't know. There's something about this. Like this is one of the most important moral quandaries of this has been like one of the most important issues of the last almost 100 years of world history. And you're coming to talk of this in my fucking my epic Marvel T-shirt. And versus a guy who's like a world scholar on this topic who's dressed in a suit. There's just something about, as you said, we were talking about this earlier. One side of this knows they're in America. They have the iron wall of America, of the American military, and then another iron wall. It's like a game. What's it called? Game of Thrones. Attack on Titan. They got the first wall of the American military, the second wall of the IDF, and then the third wall of the Iron Dome, and that's on the very, very last one out there. And they're sitting back there all the way in their little Theodore Herzl T-shirt, being like, okay, listen to me. Yeah, we kill you. You blow up a hospital or two. Okay, there were some Hamas guys there. Okay, they were getting their asthma inhalers. We had to blow them up.
Yeah. Sorry guys, it kind of threw us off there, but like, like Eli Lake. Every time I'm reminded of this dude. Seriously. Game with like look it up. Look up the description. You can look it up on the wiki of Lord Bolton. It's that guy. It's that guy. All right. So continuing on. This is just blind desire for painful revenge. That desire exists, of course, but something else, stronger and more important. When you come face to face with the type of pure evil we have encountered, an absolute evil, the prime moral directive is to bring it to heel, not weaken it, destroy it, not do deals with it, not come to terms with its existence, not to consider it more than it considered the people of Beri and Kafar Azah, not to allow it to continue existing. And that is the most important thing. In fact, the only thing that we can do now. This is Israel's mission right now, not just because of concerns regarding defense or deterrence, but because it's the right thing to do. The people of Israel and for the world at large. Even when fighting the Nazis, the value of destroying them overshadowed the value of avoiding innocent casualties. What do you think about that last line? That's interesting to me.
This has been one of the most interesting things that I have. I started researching World War II and kind of some of the American war effort in World War II when the Ukraine war happened, because a lot of that has to do with World War II. And I kind of just I've always liked World War II, but to be very clear here, not to muddy around it, the way that the Americans and the British persecuted the Second World War, prolonged the war, and caused the German population to. The reason they fanatically supported Hitler was because then the Germans and the British and the Americans would be openly admitting that they were doing what they called strategic bombing. What was it called? Terror bombing was what it was called before the war, and they started calling it strategic bombing. They would go out of their way to bomb working class German neighborhoods, to bomb places that were made of wood, to bomb places that were civilian infrastructure. I'm paraphrasing Winston Churchill's coming from the book Human Smoke by Nicholas Baker. He said, we were going to bomb them until the German people turned their knives against the belly of the Nazi war machine from within. Did that happen? No, it didn't. The German people were bombed into a fanatic and depressed mess. They offered very little resistance when the armies came in. A fanatical army fought a genocidal war on two fronts against the Soviet Union and against America. That became more fanatic as the war went on. The Nazis were a greater evil than the Soviets, and the Nazis were a greater evil than America. The Nazis were the prime evil of the modern century. I have no issue saying that. And I think the American war against them was justified. But this last sentence here, why give up? Or how do I phrase this? What you should not pursue your goal with such fanaticism that you begin to do actions that make your enemy stronger, that give your enemy moral justification. Do not do that. Do not lose the moral high ground if you haven't. We didn't in World War II, but we weren't helping ourselves when we're bombing German cities in the same way that Israel is not helping themselves when they bomb hospitals or when they bomb refugee camps. And this constant reprisal of, well, it's a greater evil. Well, it's a greater evil. Well, okay, then we can do anything that's not we can go 100% up to the line. As long as we are 1% less as evil than them, that's okay. That's just not even good strategy. It's just not even good strategy. And not to mention the moral horrendous, or how morally horrendous it is.
Yeah, I think. It never works out that way, right? Like we've seen it. I think I'm sure America has said this exact line about, I mean, other than World War II, I mean, afterwards, that we can bomb them into turning against their government. But I can't think of an example more in the modern era of exactly that. But this line of thinking doesn't work because what all the people can intake, right? It's not the greater political landscape and the way out. The thing that can intake is what this guy is doing, right? That they're dead family members and countrymen. They see the people fleeing the barbarity from the other side, and the only outlet that they have is that government, right? Is the one saying we'll defend you. Um, and as it becomes more desperate, right? Whether like, well, okay, well, I have political disagreements with this guy behind me, but this guy is like giving me a weapon and saying I'm going to help you protect your family. That's the only thing that ever happens, right? So like when is the opportunity to go over to the American side in the World War II context? Where is the opportunity to do that? When you're dropping bombs, when you're terrorized, and I'm supposed to. That's no. They said the same thing about the Japanese, right? That we were going to bomb them until they rose up. No, they just makes them more fanatical. They just going to redouble that to protect what they have. They can't build a new government. That's a political project that's impossible for them to do at that point, right? But what they can do, like what anyone can wrap their minds around, is like picking up a weapon and defending their homeland from the invader, being you. Right.
What think about and obviously this is not 100% accurate to what happens in reality, but think about the sort of the stereotype of what happens when you get hit with not when you yourself, but like the building you're in gets hit with artillery. It's called shell shock. For a couple moments, people describe nothing, the sound, your ears kind of ring, you don't really hear anything, you kind of lose your sense of bearing, you don't really exactly know what's going on. It takes you a moment to recognize where the hit came from, what's going on, things kind of regain sense. The same thing happens to a society under siege. It doesn't cause everybody to become fanatics. It causes most people to fucking lose their idea of what the fuck is going on. They as you say, you either give up or you blow up. Most people don't blow up. Most people give up. They become resigned to get up early enough in the morning to get their bowl of rice. They become You're not thinking of overthrowing the Nazi fucking empire if you are trying to. It's 1943, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to get your fucking house rebuilt with the Reich Ministry of House Reallotment or whatever, and you're trying to, your house was burnt down by an American firebomb. You're not thinking about overthrowing the fucking Nazis. You're not thinking about going on a fucking crusade. You're not thinking about much of anything. You're not thinking about much of fucking anything. In the same way that most of the people in Gaza, these poor little kids, are not thinking about how they want to overthrow and kill all Jews. They're not thinking about much of fucking anything. I was watching a really good video that's called Born in Gaza. And do you want to know what a lot of the kid did? He was a kid of video. Just all he did, walked up and down the beach collecting bottles. He had a horse and a cart, and he put the bottles in the horse cart. And then he would like fight the horse and try to get the horse to go, and he would sell the bottles. That's your life. That's what the life becomes when your city is sieged. You don't become, I don't know,
Yeah. Fuck. All right. Last two paragraphs. I don't like the way I sound. My voice is ripping me apart from within. I hate wars and killing, and I have no issues with anybody from any religion, nationality, or race, as long as they're not trying to destroy me. I am against the occupation and the control over the Palestinians. But what choice do we have right now? For the life of me, I can't see it. I also don't see any chance of territorial concessions in the near future. If anything, the contrary. This time, it really is us or them, meaning it's them. Because we're not going anywhere. I don't know how these feelings will manifest in the voting booth. If at all, and regardless, this event is bigger than any elections. After all, being on the left is an entire set of ideals, much larger than the Israeli-Gazan conflict. And I'm still there. And what's more, I believe that destroying Hamas and saving the people of Gaza is just as much an interest of the left as it is of the right. That and returning the abductee is what matters now. I think overall this is a very powerful piece. But I guess before I give my overall feelings, I like how he said like the left is more than the Israeli Gazan conflict, like which is tough for us to see as observers, outside observers, that like there are a lot more things on the plate of Israelis when they're like thinking of voting. That being said, right? And I believe that, like, and that's like just like a true thing. That being said, the population of Israel, and probably worse off now, has been trained to be deeply racist. It's a deeply racist society, right? And not just like, and I'm not just making a statement because what we leftists usually do is just say, "Oh, I'm just talking about the Israeli government." No, I'm talking about the Israeli people, deeply racist against Palestinians, um, and just Arabs in general, I guess, right? Uh, and so like that comes out in so many ways, including political, right? Like we can't untie those things. So, um, and this conflict, and the upholding of apartheid, like entrenches those feelings. It's just like for during the slave period in America, that there were a lot of people who were just like ambivalent about slavery, but like the whole project involved everyone, right? Like everyone was at some level complicit with this and helped uphold it. And so like you were like, yeah, there were other issues that were happening, political issues, but this was something that you just could not separate, leave behind. Even if you could try, but it would always come back one way or the other, right? Like a slave revolt. Um so like I just like, yeah, like that's like an intrinsic part of Israeli politics. Like it can't not be. It literally just can't not be. Um so yeah. But what else do I feel like in the last of this concessions? Yeah. You don't see any territorial concessions. I mean I don't see any territorial concessions happening. But that's because Israel still like despite these terror attacks has that dominant position, has Big Brother America behind it, saying unequivocal support. You worn down your missile supply for the Iron Dome. Don't worry, we'll replace it immediately, 100%. Right? Like, and we certainly won't attach any um strings to this. You go, you do what you have to do because you have a right to defend yourself. Also, kind of maybe like knock it off. Like, don't be too mean to them at all, right? Yeah, we don't. But of course, do whatever you want. Yeah, it won't be happening because there's no pressure. They have no pressure to do so. If you could actually feel that pressure, if you could see that pressure, um, if I was on like the Israeli political system in any real way, then you would say, actually, I can see territorial concessions happening. You would know that, yeah, that might be a thing coming up, despite all this. If you're the defeated group, right? Just like the Palestinians, they didn't want to give territorial concessions, but yeah, it looks like we lost this, and so that's what's coming. So yeah, but Kobe.
The one thing I would say is, I seeing in chat some people are a little skeptical of the author of this, and at the end of the day, I do understand many people just have a very hard time. The casualties are so much more severe on one side than they are the other. That is just a fact of the matter so far. And it's not in the Israeli side. Most of the casualties of civilians have been Palestinians. But as somebody I think said, somebody in chat said, he laments the Israeli abductees. What about all the Palestinian abductees? But here's the truth of it. And I think that maybe my perception of this is wrong, but I think I'll let you answer. When I listen to a lot of Palestinian voices, I kind of don't hear a lot of people spending too much time lamenting the Israeli abductees or the Israeli casualties. They condemn it, but they move on and they focus on what they view to be the greater injustice. And in my personal opinion, that's what I see here too. I'm not justifying it, but in my opinion, it seems like if I can recognize why one side would take that response, why a Palestinian person would be more concerned with the Palestinians being killed, I can understand why an Israeli person would be more concerned with the people, with Palestinian abductees. I just do. You know what I mean? I can apply it on both sides, even if I can cast a moral judgment that exists outside of my empathy.
9/11. You know, like you can, if you were alive at that moment, I'm sure you could have said that, yeah, right now my focus is on Americans. Like I don't think many Americans, and I don't think Americans still do, like have like a wider view of like the Middle East and like why those attacks happened and that greater conflict. But even if you did, even if it was like up close in the way that the Israel Palestine conflict is for them, um like it's very human to say that in this moment. Yeah, like my concern is uh the my tribe, people that I'm closest to in this situation, the people I can understand the most, the people that could have walked by me on the street. Maybe I had friends, maybe I had coffee relationships with them, or maybe someone I knew them, and that's enough. And that gives you that level of kinship. Sure, I can absolutely see it for the Israelis too, but like it's I guess it's like, oh man, but I don't know if I should make this comparison, but here we go. This is like when someone has suffered a violent crime, right? That someone has suffered some sort of assault, some great injustice to them. Um, we don't let them like decide what the punishment is for the other side. We have a justice system, like a neutral arbiter. Now, I get this doesn't work exactly the same way when we're talking about nations, but the point is that someone has suffered a great trauma, and it is human of them to seek revenge, or maybe to someone if they happen to someone close to them, to seek revenge on their behalf. Um, but we can understand that that person at that point can't is not can't see the bigger moral picture. It's not a fault of theirs, but they can't. And so we don't give them the ability to like mete out a sentence against or a conviction against the other person. So like that's what's happening here. A group that has been straight up no fucking around traumatized Israelis are now lashing out. And we're just saying that this traumatized person, that everything they do is simply justified. Anyway, we don't do it in a smaller scale. What do you think about that?
It's a correct. I think it's something Mate. He's a Harvard psychologist who is a Holocaust survivor and is the son of a Holocaust survivor and I think a victim of the Holocaust. He talks about this exact same thing, where he says that we see this in individual people. How many of us know the kid? We went to school with a kid who had a really fucked up growing up, and he came to school with bruises, and now he doesn't have the greatest relationship with his baby mama, and they're always fighting. And I'm not trying to be stereotypical here. I come from a lower class community as well. That's the fucking cycle, bro. You get beat by your dad, and then you beat your wife. You are neglected, and you neglect. That's just my camera dead here. Well, you got to wrap it up here in a little bit here, but that's just that's not the cycle of that's just a cycle of humanity. So yeah, no, I think it's very true. And like I said earlier here, the big reason I think me and you and a lot of other people in the West, regardless of our individual family histories, feel so much about this is we're like the equivalent I made here. You're at the bar with your friend, and he's complaining to you about his ex-wife or his wife, and then he says you decide you're going to drive him to his wife's house and drop him off, and it's midnight and he's drunk. You know what's going to happen. He was just telling you what's going to happen. He was just informing you of all of his reasons to do what he's about to do. You are not the one that's going to beat the woman, but you are complicit in that action if you take him home, if you let him up the stairs. And that's what I would view as this kind of thing. You know what I mean? You become drunk with rage, which is something I think America became drunk with revenge. And you don't let a drunk person drive. You don't let a drunk person open a bank account. Don't let a drunk person get a tattoo. Don't let a drunk person respond to a terrorist attack.
All right. Thank you for that. And Kobe, this was a great article. I put the article in chat, guys. So, and let me also put it in YouTube chat. Not that anyone's there, but Um, 1 second. Let me grab that link. In YouTube chat. So if you're in YouTube chat, there it is. There's the one only message that's there. But any case, we'll continue on. Tomorrow we'll have the array. On Thursday we'll have All Black Everything. So come and join us for all of that. Thanks all for being here. There's been a lot of not fun. It's been a thing. So I sent you off to our friend Nina, who haven't seen her in a while. And I am just waiting for the